So if I woke up tomorrow and somebody told me, Adam, you have to move, you have to leave your current house, and you have to choose just one area to live in Denver for the next 10 years, well, where would I pick? Well, after living in Denver, Colorado my entire life, over 40 years, I have to share with you guys some areas that I think are really important to consider in 2026. After helping countless people relocate here to the Mile High City, Denver, Colorado, and spending time in just about every single corner of the city, I think my answer is actually gonna maybe surprise you a bit on this video. And that is because there are a lot of great neighborhoods here, but these are the three that I just keep coming back to, and not because they're the cheapest, not because they're the most expensive or luxurious, and not because they're the newest, but because I really do think they offer one of the best combinations of just lifestyle, but also convenience and access to the outdoors. And to throw even another one on top of that maybe is the most important when it comes to real estate, the best for long-term value. So today, again, to be sharing three of these that I think are great to consider, and I'm looking forward to it. So let's get going on a brand new episode of Living in Denver. So before we jump in, just really quick guys, down below, feel free to reach out if you have any questions as you go through the video today. And every month I have live homebuyer webinars. They're great if you're just considering, moving out to Colorado, or if you're more seriously considering buying a home out here. We cover a lot of really good stuff in there. So if you want to join the next, they're free and online. Just go to denverwebinar.com and I'll see you guys there. But with all that being said, let's just talk now about the first of these three areas, and that's going to be Littleton. And if you guys have been watching other videos of mine in the past, you might know that I actually currently reside and live right here in Littleton. And man, I love it. This is a great part of the Denver area. Now, the reasons, there are many of them, but one of the main reasons why I personally love Littleton is it's pretty simple. It feels like a town, not just another suburb. And what I mean by this is we do have a real historic downtown Littleton with all kinds of really cool locally owned and operated businesses, this higher level and this sense of community, which is awesome. Local restaurants and coffee shops, parks, trails, just all these different things going on, as well as a very highly rated school system. If you guys want info on that, go to niche.com and just look at Littleton Public Schools. They typically have pretty high ratings, and you're just really close to downtown Denver, which I think is really important still for the people that do commute on a daily or somewhat regular basis to downtown Denver for work or for other aspects of their lives. On that note, one thing that I personally love about this Littleton area is its location, specifically just how quickly you can really get anywhere you need to go. And that's not just to certain areas like downtown Denver, that's also the mountains, for example. If you're in the Littleton area, you can just hop on C470 and within a few minutes, you're already heading towards Evergreen. You could even take a back way, kind of a little secret road called Highway 285 to kind of bypass some of the really bad traffic spots that tend to get built up on the weekend warrior ski traffic days. But again, just awesome location when it comes to mountain access, since you're already on that southwestern side of Denver, but also you can get to other areas. There's a lot of really efficient roads on this side of town that I think are better than really anywhere else if you kind of compare the four kind of main quadrants of the Denver metro area. So that's a huge reason for me personally and why I love living here. And I'm in Grant Ranch, which is also really cool because of all the water we have here. There's private reservoir that we can use for paddleboarding and pontoon boating and fishing, all this kind of stuff that is, again, pretty rare to find in other parts of Denver. So the other area, though, that I want to share within Littleton that also is incredible. In fact, it's probably one of the most popular areas and getting a ton of press, actually, because of a gate system that the area is voting on to potentially get passed, and that's going to restrict access for some people to get into this area. And what area am I talking about? It's Bomar. And Bomar is actually where my parents live, so I have a connection as well with Bomar, and it is awesome. It's an area that I didn't know much about at all growing up. I lived in Wheat Ridge as a kid, and that was far enough away where I just never really got over to this Bomar or Grant Ranch area to really appreciate when I was a youngster. But today, man, these are areas that as I get older, I appreciate more and more and more. And I'm always so excited to share with other people because it does fit so many boxes when it comes to your lifestyle balance with just an incredible place to call home. So really cool spot. Now, talking a little bit more about Bomar, just to kind of give you a little bit more of a taste of where and what Bomar is all about, I'd like to start with just saying that this is really an area that only is a good fit if your budget allows. The key there is budget. And that's because it is one of the most, I think, unique communities anywhere around Denver. Private lake, really mature trees, custom homes, very peaceful, just unlike any really other area that I know about in the Denver area. And there are some massive homes getting put into this area. Basically, I have some specific areas that I know in the Beaumar area where people were paying, well over $1 million, sometimes maybe even pushing $2 million, and scraping the house. Literally paying that much money really just for that ideal lot, that land, to have maybe a great view of Beaumar. Maybe it's just the location with elevated and a little bit better scenery of looking out to the west and seeing all the mountains in the distance. So very high price point is what I'm trying to get at when it comes to Beaumar. But man, if your budget allows for it, I can't think of many other places that are this unique, have this much potential, again, for that long-term value, and are just incredible places just to drive through and check out. So definitely want to put that one on your list, you guys. So just to close out this first area, Littleton, just want to kind of leave you guys with this. I have so many, not just friends and family members, but also past clients that will reach out to me, and they always just tell me, specifically when we're in Littleton, about, Adam, I just didn't realize how much I love living here. And I think if that's something that you're really putting a high level of importance on, is just loving not just the house, but the actual area that you're in, I definitely want you guys to check out Littleton, because I don't think you're going to be disappointed. So now that we've talked about Littleton, I want to share another area, but this one's going to be a little bit to the north. Another great area, though, to consider, and an area that I've also spent a lot of my days in, especially as a younger person. I went to high school in an area very close to here, and that's going to be Golden, but also adding on to not just Golden, also Applewood. Now, Applewood and Golden, these have been some areas that have really been some of my favorite recommendations for buyers in the past. And Golden specifically, it gives you a lot. It really gives you that overall, just that Colorado feel. And what I mean by that is that you don't just get downtown Golden, which is incredible, really good walkability, lots of great restaurants, bars. You got Coors Brewery feet away, it's just literally right there. But you also have places like Clear Creek. So in the summertime, you'll see hundreds of people floating down on just little inner tubes down Clear Creek. Lots of really strong community. Again, great restaurants, great coffee shops, great bars, lots of mountain views and outdoor areas within these different restaurants. Just a very cohesive, a very blended, but just a very healthy community, in my opinion. It definitely feels active, it feels outdoorsy, but there are still a lot of other things that are going on and available to its residents. Really good art scene, just a lot. So I think Golden is an area that, again, is definitely worth putting on, at least on your radar, and just driving down and maybe walking through the downtown Golden area for an hour or two just to see what you think firsthand. But I've had very few people that have ever done that and then told me that they didn't like it. So definitely check out this downtown Golden, and just overall Golden and Applewood. So when I say Applewood, for some of you guys, you might not really know what I'm referring to here. And if you've watched other videos of mine in the past, I have featured Applewood specifically on a few, because it is probably near the top, along with Beaumar, as areas that are going to see a ton of long-term value, long-term appreciation. And now I like to think of Applewood as kind of this unique take, meaning that, when you're in an area that is very geographically limited, and what I mean by this is, in Applewood, you can't develop any new homes to the west because you're already in the mountains. There's no ability to do so. You really can't also expand any more to the east, because that's already kind of been done, and now you're kind of hitting already established neighborhoods. And really the same for north and south. It's really in this area where it's already been kind of maxed out. So all you're seeing in the Applewood area is typically just homes that are being purchased and then either scraped and rebuilt, or just massive renovations. Maybe buying an old ranch style and popping the top, meaning that you're adding a second level to an existing ranch style home. That's really common in Applewood. However, you are also seeing some new builds, and that's going to be more for multifamily and apartments. And that's because of the Lutheran hospital that just relocated actually into the Applewood area. Again, a massive improvement, in my opinion, to this part of Denver, because that hospital, it's that anchor tenant now in Applewood, and is getting all these other businesses to start coming over and being built all around it. So, one of the best Lifetime Fitnesses just went in. They're developing an entire area where you can have open carry, where there'll be different restaurants and bars where you can walk in between the different places while carrying an open, container of alcohol, kind of like Las Vegas almost. So anyways, they're just doing a lot of new stuff in the Applewood area because of Lutheran Hospital. And when it comes to the real estate side of things, because it is so limited and it doesn't have the ability to continue to expand, the prices continue to go up because of that supply and demand factor. And you are about as close as you possibly could be to getting up the mountain to go skiing on the weekends. You know, that's something that also doesn't get talked about enough, but as a skier and somebody that's one of my biggest passions in life, man, that's important to me. So when you live in areas like Golden and Applewood, you're literally just a 5-minute drive in most cases to get to the I-70 on-ramp, and you're there. You're heading up the mountains. You know, when you live in other areas, maybe like in the northern part of Denver, like Thornton, North Glen, maybe Erie, even up in Boulder, you're spending so much more time just to get to where Applewood and Golden are located. It might be a 30 or 40-minute drive just to get to where you would be if you lived in that area, started on your trip to the mountains. And let's be honest, you guys, when you're going skiing on the weekends and you're already getting up at 5 in the morning just to beat that traffic, it sure is nice to be on that western side of town and being able to leave a little bit later, or just having that overall time in the car be significantly less. So really, really cool areas. I love Golden, I love Applewood, and I hope you guys will give it a chance because it is some of my favorite area in the entire Denver area. All right, so we're finally there, ready for the third and final neighborhood. And this one is gonna be Northwestern Arvada. Now, when I talk about Northwest Arvada, you're gonna see that there's a lot of different styles of homes, different communities, some that are brand new, areas like Layton Rock as an example, or Candelas, but also there's a lot more mature neighborhoods, and those mature neighborhoods are some of the ones that I personally think are really gonna see that strong upside, that long-term value, that long-term appreciation. So when we talk about Northwestern Arvada, specifically I'm talking about areas like Westwoods, 5 Parks, and that entire kind of corridor all around there. And that area specifically has really exploded in popularity, and honestly, I completely understand why. You're right at the base of the foothills in these areas. You got great mountain views, some really, really good golf courses, lots of trails, really good parks, and some of the best views, in my opinion, in the entire Denver metro area. Not just because you can look out west and see mountains that are a lot closer to you, but also looking out to the east and a little bit to the south, you have really, really nice views of the entire downtown Denver skyline. So, you know, there's some homes, for example, in 5 Parks that I've seen that really have a good view of both of these that I'm talking about. Layton Rock is that newer community, more of a master plan community, but they also have some really good views over there. So just really, really cool spot in the Denver area. Now, in addition though to that, one of the other reasons that I think this is such a strong area is really understanding its location, and specifically how it's kind of this connection or this glue between areas that are a little bit further to the north, like Boulder, one of the most popular and most expensive parts of the entire Denver area. But also, again, that's to the north. To the south of Arvada, you've got Golden, which is another one of the most expensive, the most popular parts of the Denver area. So you're really surrounded by some of the other most popular areas, which again, only continues to bring up Arvada. And that's not just, again, about home prices, but also just about overall amenities, you know, what's being offered, what kind of new businesses are going in, new restaurants, just so much popularity around all of the areas surrounding Arvada that naturally affects Arvada as well. And just some awesome, awesome areas that I personally would love to consider as a future home for myself. I really like this Northwest Arvada area. And a couple other things I'll add to that before kind of closing out this video. First, understanding that some parts of this Northwest Arvada are also considered unincorporated Jefferson County. So anytime you're looking at homes, there's different zoning regulations. You know, some zoning is more restrictive. For example, very limited on what you can do at the property, very specific on what colors your house can be, you know, how long you can have something parked in your driveway, all that kind of stuff. More like HOA, homeowner association type restrictions. Northwest Arvada has a lot of open areas that are, again, unincorporated Jefferson County, where it's very unrestricted. So some of these areas will actually be zoned unincorporated, which will allow sometimes even working from home. So if you guys maybe have a job where you want to have a workshop at your home, this could also be really, really ideal for that. And oftentimes you're going to see lower annual property taxes. So lots of things that are kind of, you know, good from that perspective, but I will push back and say there are some negatives or some other considerations when looking at areas that might be unincorporated. And that could also just be, you know, what are your neighbors up to? You know, if you're in an area that's unincorporated, but you still have close proximity to your next door neighbors, you know, are you okay with having those less restrictions if that means that You know, your neighbor who might be kind of a little bit of a pack rat all of a sudden has 3 or 4 cars parked permanently in their driveway, and maybe even a big art installation that they put in their front yard that they think is amazing, but everybody else is kind of still up for debate. Just making the point that, you know, there's obviously pros and cons for all this kind of stuff, but this is something that's fairly unique in Nevada, is some of this unincorporated Jefferson County. Now, to close out this video, I just want to end it with this, you guys. You know, when thinking through some of these areas, you know, and some of the other areas that I didn't mention, you know, could I have picked Highlands Ranch? Absolutely. You know, could I have picked Castle Rock? Definitely. You know, Wash Park. Yes, it's one of the most popular places ever. Central Park, you know, great for the right buyer. Obviously, what I'm trying to get at is there's a lot of fantastic neighborhoods all around Denver. These just happen to be the 3 that I myself personally would recommend, again, not just for the outdoor lifestyle that it provides, but for that long-term appreciation and just value opportunity that I see as being some of the strongest in the entire state. And when really kind of thinking through all 3 of these areas that I've shared with you guys, when you really zoom out and you kind of look at it from a 10,000 or 30,000 foot view, all 3 of these have something in common. You know, they're all close enough to Denver, but also they all are incredibly close to what makes Colorado, Colorado. And that's the mountains, the trails, the lakes, that outdoor lifestyle, which I think is so important and one of the biggest things to really keep in mind when considering where to live in the Denver area. You know, oftentimes when I talk to other clients and just other viewers like yourselves, you know, pretty much, not all the time, but most of the time, if you buy a house, you can change the house. You know, you can renovate it. You can make it more appropriate for what you want in a house. But you can't do the same with the neighborhood. So that's why it's so important to really understand first the neighborhood, and then and only then identifying a house within that neighborhood that really fits what you're looking for. If you start off just looking for the right house, it might end up in the wrong neighborhood, and you might end up a couple years down the road needing to sell just because it doesn't fit that lifestyle, which is as important, if not even more so, than the home itself. So hope you guys have a great rest of your week. If you have any questions, again, all that info down below, feel free to reach out. And don't forget, every month we have live homebuyer webinars. They're free, they're on Zoom. And guys, this is a great way just to learn a little bit more, not only about the Denver metro area, what's happening right now, but also just getting some strategies and some tips on what to do today. So maybe a year or 2 from now, when you are maybe ready to buy a home, you've done what you need to do and you're in the best position possible to win and find that perfect house, get it at a good price, and just be happy. Have it be a win-win scenario. And I know you guys can do that. So hope you guys got some value out of this. And again, reach out if you need anything. Until next week, I'll see you then on a brand new episode of Living in Denver. I'll see you then, guys. Bye.